Welcome back to the Road to Great Health podcast, where we discuss new solutions to today's most complicated health problems. I'm Dr. Kevin Linderman from Dr. Kevin's Wellness Clinic here in South Louisiana, and I'm joined by Dr. Rob DeMartino from Superior Health Solutions in Las Vegas. And guess what? We've got a good one for you today again.
Do we really?
We do have another good one for him today. I know I say that every time. And so if you guys have been keeping up with the podcasts over the last 4 or 5 podcasts, we've been discussing something Dr. Rob has coined the Archimedes levers. And what we mean by that is these are very big leverage points that need to be a part of any functional wellness program that hopes to truly restore patients' health that have really chronic problems, autoimmunes, and all of these other really chronic problems. And the thing about it is, almost none of these levers are ever addressed. About the only one that's ever addressed is vitamin D. And what they're doing for that really does nothing of what it's supposed to do. Taking supplements for D, if you've caught that podcast, does very little. So we're on number 5 today. This is going to be our final lever in this series. And Doc, this is something I don't know if anybody has heard of. Most doctors have not even heard of this, right?
Yeah, I presented this from stage not too long ago at a conference in front of a couple hundred doctors. And when I went through the concept of it, I'm looking out at just a bunch of glazed eyes and glazed faces. How many people actually know what I'm talking about? You get a couple of rogue hands. It's people who'd seen me before.
Right.
So I promise I'll make it simple, but you'll know it in its presentation in diseases. Right. But its function and how you can do things about it is probably going to be a little bit foreign, but we're going to take you through it. It's a really important topic.
So the last lever that we're going to discuss today that needs to be addressed is the Ubiquitin system, or what Dr. Rob calls UB rates. And so we did vitamin D, we did leptin, we did melatonin, we did MSH, and the 5th lever is UB rates and what your UB rates are doing, because it really plays a big part in health and disease, right? And let me say one thing first before we get started with this line of questions. So for those of you out there listening, if you've caught our previous podcasts, you might kind of be thinking, man, that one doctor knows a lot, but that other doctor doesn't hardly know anything. My role in the podcast is to ask questions from a layperson's terms. And so I know the answer to most of this stuff, even though if it seems like I ask really silly questions, or man, that doctor really is asking questions about things he ought to know. My role is to ask layperson questions and let Dr. Rob answer them scientifically.
Yeah, and I can vouch that he knows them. Trust me.
I know most of this stuff, right? Now, it did take me a few years of listening to you talk about the Ubiquitin system that I started to go, I get it now, right? I started to really understand it because it's a little bit complicated, but it's so important, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, because it's an abstract term. And the other side of it too is if you think about it from the perspective of we talked about melatonin, we talked about vitamin D, we even talked about leptin and MSH, and all 4 of those things, they interact with each other, right? Melatonin has to work in order for leptin to work. In order for leptin to work, then MSH can work and vitamin D can work. They all work together, and it's no different with UB rates. But those 4 we can measure. Right, it's not uncommon for people to get a vitamin D test, and they'll see what their vitamin D levels are. Almost every person that we check is catastrophically low, unless they're taking supplements for it. You can measure melatonin. Most people don't do that, even though they may take supplementation for it and things like that. But you can measure leptin, you can measure MSH. These are measurable numbers, and they're important numbers to get measured. But UB rates is one of those things that you can't measure. Right? It's for us to know. And look at those other 4 levers saying you're going to have a problem with this. And that's why I said it's a little bit more abstract because, yeah, it's easy to see your vitamin D is low on lab work, right? It's easy to see your leptin levels are low, your MSH levels are low. But UB rates is something that you have to figure and we have to know how to apply. But knowing it as a concept, especially for a layperson out there, is really important because, like all the others, it's going to rear its head in all the big, bad, ugly diseases, especially the neurodegenerative disorders like dementias that no one wants to get.
Right. And this is called the Ubiquitin proteasome system?
Yeah, protease system, right? So they call it UPS, right? So just like making deliveries. So essentially, in simplistic terms, what it is, it's your body's ability to tag and mark proteins, right? So we have to fold proteins. In order for proteins inside of our body to work, we have to fold them into different shapes. The easiest example, I think, if you think of the visualization of like what your DNA looks like, right? It's the big coil, right? Those are a whole bunch of proteins folded in a very specific order, right? So when we take different proteins, depending how your body folds them will determine what they do, right? So it's the shape of them and how we think of it like origami, right? The way you fold them together determines then what those proteins will do. So it's the ability to fold proteins correctly and then be able to recognize, hey, this one is folded the way I want it to and it's going to work correctly, or this one is not folded the way that I want it to and it's going to work incorrectly. So your body is paying really, really, really close attention to this, because if it's folded incorrectly, it needs to get tagged and say, hey, we have a problem here and this needs to be unfolded and refolded back properly.
Yeah.
Right? That's how your immune system knows. Right? So a lot of times when people in autoimmune, they'll say, well, my body is mistakenly attacking itself. It's looking at proteins that are folded incorrectly. Right? When we talked about heteroplasmy in other seminars, right? We talked about in other podcasts, we talk about that it's damage to the DNA. Well, we talk about a damage to DNA. It's a simple term. They're folded wrong. Right?
Yeah.
The DNA is folded wrong. And your immune system looks at it and goes, what is that?
Yeah.
Right? Your body, think of your immune system as like having, you go to the supermarket, it's got the little barcode machine you can scan, right? So it's scanning everybody. So, okay, that's your barcode. That's your barcode's different than my barcode, right?
Right.
Okay, that's our barcode. That's our barcode. This is not our barcode, right? That's how it knows. It can tell what looks different, and it can tell by the proteins looking differently. So it's a really important system because you want to be able to know which ones work right and which ones don't. Because is it possible that you tag the wrong one and now your body attacks itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is it possible that bad ones go through and don't get tagged? Right? It's underactive and it doesn't get tagged? Yeah. And now all of a sudden you got something in there that's causing problems, and then they build up in your brain, and then they take an image of your brain and say, oh, you got all these little white plaque lesions.
Yeah.
That's what this is. So it's why we did it last. It's always why I teach it last. It's always why we did it last, because the other four levers, if they're not correct, they're the ones that keep this one working properly.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing when it comes down to it. So this is about how your body can fold proteins, tag proteins, understand where they are in spatial arrangement. And that's a huge budget for the human body.
Yeah. Yeah. And this has a lot to do with aging too, right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Big deal with aging.
Think of it this way. The more efficient that this system stays, the longer somebody will age, right? Because we'll talk about the fact, if we talk about heteroplasmy, damage to especially mitochondrial DNA, we expect about 10% damage every decade.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if it's as linear as 1% a year, but it's about 10% every decade. So about 70% damage of mitochondria, they start to malfunction really pretty significantly, where people are going to get diagnoses, and about 80% function, the body starts failing, which makes sense because that's around human life expectancy.
Yeah.
Right? We kind of last around that length of time, but some people last longer than that. Well, what do they see? Well, there's a direct relationship to they have less DNA damage. They last longer. Less DNA damage means that proteins fold more correctly. So if they're folded right, they work right, and they work for longer. So this gets you both quality and quantity of time.
Yeah, which
right?
we all want.
It is a major role in that.
Right.
Yeah, we all want that. But the problem is you don't find it until it's a problem.
Right.
Conventional medical testing doesn't find it until it's an issue. We're talked about the other four levers to know, and again, we'll talk later about some of the diagnoses that are really common, that you know that this is a problem. If you have this diagnosis, you know that's a problem.
Yeah.
But if those other four levels are off, this is going to be a problem for you. It just depends if you wait till it's bad enough that it shows up on an MRI.
Yeah. So if we keep good UB rates, your body stays cleaner, your cells work better, your genetics stays more intact, you age less, you have more energy, your mitochondria work better. UB rates is really a big deal, knowing what that is. And so it's definitely something that needs to be part of a functional wellness program like ours.
Yeah, it's part of the conversation, right? Like I said, it would be nice if we had some sort of way of testing that number and measuring it out directly like we do with vitamin D and stuff like that. But it's when we talk about it, this is going to be present, and it's what we're trying to fix. Right. We need to stimulate the body to be able to fold these proteins correctly. Right. We need to stimulate the body to be able to do that, because there's no medication out there that will unfold them and fold them normally.
Yeah.
Right. That's only something that your body can fix. Those other 4 levers have to be correct in order for it to do that. Right. So this is an outcome that we're trying to get to that's well established in the medical world. Right. So tau protein is a specific protein that when it misfolds, they find that in the brains of people who have Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Right? Beta amyloid is a protein that misfolds, and they find that in the brains of people who have Alzheimer's. Right?
Yeah.
Huntington's proteins, you find it in people who have Huntington's disease. Right? So this is well established. What it means is what proteins misfolded, and then where does it happen, and what disease do they get? What we're trying to talk about is how do you ever let that happen?
Yeah.
Right. And what are the strategies to keep that from being?
I think that's why we're seeing such an increase in all of the neurodegenerative disorders like that. I mean, Alzheimer's is projected to reach over 13 million people by 2060. Parkinson's skyrocketing. Neurological diseases overall, they're saying more than 3 billion people worldwide will have some type of neurological condition over the next 20 years. And so keeping these UB rates working correctly can make such a huge difference in trying to eliminate some of that, and it's certainly keeping you and your loved ones from getting some of these neurodegenerative disorders like this.
Yeah, it's they're so worried about this that they're saying that this is going to be the thing that actually collapses the healthcare budget, right?
Yeah.
Because the basic idea is our brains are not lasting us. Right. Our brains are under constant duress. They are not lasting us, and that's why you'll start to see the life expectancy drop. Just because, again, where your brain goes, your body follows, and if the brain can't keep up with it, it's going to shorten lifespan times. And obviously, in the medical perspectives, they talk about this the most around the ideologies of neurological disorders. But at the same exact time, this is a major thing in cancer as well, too.
Yeah.
Right. And actually what they found was groundbreaking research. I think it was 2021. Of course, got lost in the shuffle during the COVID times of everything else like that. But it was groundbreaking research that the higher amount of protein misfolding that somebody had, the more resistant they were to cancer therapies. Mm-hmm. Right. So chemo couldn't kill the cancer cells, the more proteins that were misfolded. Right. Wow. Even natural methodology, it didn't work as well, which is why, again, we talk about these as foundational levers like, hey, this has got to be good. Right. Whether you're going to go conventional, whether you're not, if these things are good, you're going to have a way better outcome. But so it definitely plays a major role even in the cancers and obviously, in the autoimmune disease spectrum of things as well.
Yeah. And one of the things they talk about a lot with like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's is these do have the ability just to collapse the whole healthcare system, because this is such an expensive, medically, such an expensive thing to take care of these people, because they need 24-hour care. And so it's not like you can go see the doctor and then be done with it. This, when you get in end-stage Alzheimer's, it's really a 24-hour care plan. And that's one reason why it's so expensive. And it's the with the rates increasing like they are, it could be a real problem if we don't do something about it.
Yeah, and it's, it gives firsthand experience. It's an ugly way to go out.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard on the person. It's hard on the family. It is a very, very sad scenario to watch it kind of go down that way. And by the time somebody's already in it, it's hard, right? Because now this isn't like 1 or 2 proteins inside the body is misfolded, right? Like folded incorrectly. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of this happening. And by the time you find something like that, to use the example of Parkinson's, by the time that somebody gets Parkinson's to where they'll have symptoms, and typically the symptoms is the movement issues, they'll be in the part of the brain that's associated with Parkinson's, they'll be 70 to 80% of that protein's damaged, right? So we're not early.
Right.
Like we are late in the game, and there's still stuff that you can do about it. Please don't mishear me and say like, oh man, I have this and I'm kind of out of luck. There's still a lot that you can do about it. But I think such a powerful thing about something like a podcast like this, the reason we're taking the time out of our days to do this is try to get people, hey, look, pay attention to this stuff now.
Yeah.
Right, because it was the expression like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
Especially when it comes to your brain stuff.
Right.
Especially when it comes to cancer stuff. Especially when it comes to autoimmune stuff. because they're not easy problems down the road. And cost is so prohibitive, a lot of people can't get the care. Like you said, because, can you get into mental health facilities or memory care facilities? That stuff's not cheap.
Yeah, and the thing I hear patients tell me all the time is like, well, I'm just getting a little forgetful because, I'm 40. I should be getting a little bit forgetful. I'm like, no, you should not be. Like, that is a big concern because, a little bit of brain fog or a little bit of forgetfulness in your 40s or 50s can be a sign of full-blown dementia or Alzheimer's in your 60s. And by then, you're really behind the 8 ball. Like you said, it's really hard at that point. But if we can take someone early on in the game and start working on these 5 levers, we can really make big changes to what their next 2 decades are going to look like, instead of always being behind the wave and trying to play catch up. And so that's why we always encourage people, like, take care of yourself now. And 40s is the perfect time for you to be looking at a functional wellness program like ours, because it's so much easier to head some of these things off instead of 20 years in the future when 70% of these proteins are messed up, like what Dr. Rob was saying.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I get really frustrated. I sat with a patient the other day and I said, well, you went to all these doctors. What are they telling you you're having this problem? And she says, well, they said I'm just getting older. I'm like, you're 30.
Yeah.
I'm like, what does that mean for me? Right? I'm way older than that, And I was like, I was like almost dumbfounded. I'm like, you're telling her she has these problems because she's 30 years old? Like, it's really easy to just blow things off from a doctor perspective, or even, you write it for yourself because you want to hope for the best. Like, well, I'm just getting a little bit older. That doesn't have to be the path, though. Right. That doesn't have to be the accepted length of that, too. But you see people like they're older and they're vibrant and they're moving around and they're up and they're mobile and they're going on cruises and they're doing all the things they enjoy. And then you have the other side of it where it's wheelchair and it's poor health and, there's a very different path that they walk. And that's why I said, the other nice part about it, even though we can't measure the protein thing necessarily specifically, if you can measure these other 4 levers, it takes away God, I hope I'm not that one and I hope I'm this one.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with hope. Right? This is science. We know this. We can measure it. We can apply this. We can do all the things to prevent that. And I think that's part of the problem when it comes down to that stuff is people feel like, well, if I'm lucky, I won't get dementia. If I'm unlucky, I'm going to get it. Or if it's genetically, I'm my family had it, I'm screwed. No, there's a more chance of it being that. But that's even more reason to, if you do it now, then you have that outcome then. Right?
Yeah.
And it's way easier to, 20-year-olds heal faster than 30-year-olds. 30-year-olds heal faster than 40-year-olds. Or 40-year-olds heal faster than 80-year-olds.
Yeah.
How far can you get depends upon when you start this journey, but there's always positive to go because that continuum is always moving.
It's true. There's a story I often tell that I call the tale of 2 paths, where you have 2 ladies that are 65 years old, one living the time of her life and the other is in a nursing home. Now, they're the same age, but at some point in their health, one of them took the right fork and the other one took the left fork. And that didn't happen at 65 or even 60. Years, if not decades earlier, one did things to try to make her future healthy, and the other one, unfortunately, did not, or didn't know what to do, or no one told them. And so the sooner we can get your body headed on that healthy fork, the healthier that road is going to be along the way, and the longer you're going to last, and the longer your brain is going to last, and the better you're going to do and be able to be around for your kids and grandkids and great grandkids. But it's really something that you don't want to put off. So many people just blame their health problems away on, well, I'm just getting older, or well, I'm just stressed at work, and it's almost like a slow decline. They talk themselves out of doing something because, well, they just blame it away on this or that, sometimes even for years. And don't do that to yourself. Life is short. We really need to take action to get ourselves healthy, and not just now, but also for in the future.
One of my mentors always used to tell me, and I always remember the story, he would say, like, if the car that you have right now is the only car you could ever own.
Yeah.
Like, would you take good care of it? right? Would you make sure you change the tires? Would you make sure you change the oil? Would you make sure you put in the nice gas? He's like, would you get it checked up, right? Because if that car doesn't work and you can't get another one, you're walking everywhere if you're trying to get anywhere, which is probably not going to be doable, right? You don't want to be walking in 118-degree heat in Vegas in the summertime, right? And it's really true. I mean, meanwhile, this is your car, right? This body is the only one that you get, right? And it's got to get you from here to there. And imagine a car lasting you 80 years. It's kind of laughable that would ever happen, right? They barely last 10, 15, depending on what kind of car you're driving, right? But it's the same idea. You know, this body, this health has to get you. It is your greatest priority. It is your greatest possession, right? And people who don't have, I mean, you ask people who've lost their health, they'll tell you that, right? You know, you have a million problems until you have a health problem, then you have one problem,
right?
Because it's the biggest thing. And you know, even then, when it comes down to it, the number one reason why you have bankruptcies in the United States is healthcare.
Yeah.
People have health problems, and it's 60% of bankruptcies are based off of health issues, right? So this is an all-encompassing type of problem, and you know, if you really think about it, sometimes I'll ask patients this, and I'm like, so what are you doing for your health? What do you mean? I'm like, on a day-to-day basis, like, what do you do? And then you know, they kind of get a little quiet and a little sheepish, and they're like, well, like I try to eat well sometimes, you know, and like sometimes I work out. And it kind of just points to the picture of it's not a lot, right? This is your most prized thing, and it's not a lot. But a lot of it is like they don't even know what to do,
right?
They don't understand this idea of, you know, all the stuff that we've talked about in all the other podcasts, like the sunlight and this and that. There's no roadmap for them to follow of like, yeah, I would really love to do that. Like, what would that be? They're like, what do you do? Like, what does your life look like? What does your days look like? And I'll explain. Okay, this is what I do. This is what I think about. If I was you, this is really what I'd pay attention to.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, obviously we use a lot of technologies in our practice to expedite healing, but those are the conversations that we're having on the day-to-day basis with patients as well too, of how are you empowered to know that this is not going to happen or this is. Now, of course, I could step off the curb tomorrow and get smacked by a bus, you know, if I'm not looking, and that could end that really quickly. But at the same time, how much can you control? I'm amazed at how people feel so out of control in a time where we have all of this information right at our fingertips. Right? The value of information is almost gone to zero because no one knows what to look at, no one knows what to believe, no one knows what to trust. And even though we have all this information, nobody knows what to do.
Right.
And we talked about it before we even started the podcast. It was like that was the whole reason we wanted to do it, is to try to get it out there. Because people feel so disempowered when it comes to health. And it's your most powerful possession. And they're leaving it in the hand, and you know, again, a little bit kind of controversial take, but you're leaving it in the hand of a system, conventional medicine and insurance, that their primary goal is not getting you better.
Right.
Right. The insurance's primary goal is not to get you well.
Right.
Right. So, and again, conventional medicine it's not that the doctors are bad. There's limitations on the way that they can practice within the system to actually get that result.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that we see a lot of times too, you know, while we're on this subject, is what we call mommy syndrome, you know, where I'm going to take care of everybody else in the family and put myself last. And, you know, the thing to think about with that is, well, who can replace mom if mom's loses her health? Nobody. And so, you know, don't fall into that trap of putting yourself last because you're doing it for your family, because you're really not. By taking care of you, you're actually taking care of your family and your future kids and, you know, everything that you have to take care of. So health is very important. I mean, it's just such an important thing. And the reason we named this podcast The Road to Great Health is because our goal is to show you that pathway. All of these podcasts are centered around why is everyone's health so bad, and what can we do in a real scientific way to hit these big lever points to try to make it better.
Yeah, and it's a good point, Joe. If you listen, nature leaves clues, success leaves clues, right? If you want to get something, look at somebody who's already done it, right? And so you look at people who are healthy, what do they do? Like, okay, what does that look like? But any guru who talks about anything for like success in any version of life will always sell what? The best investment is an investment into yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? More knowledge, going to seminars and different things like that, even being around like-minded people. But those investments into yourself and investment into your health, you know, I always laugh with the expression is, you know, no amount of wealth has ever bought any time. That's not true at all.
Right.
Right? Now, you could run yourself down making all that wealth. And that's where usually people live their life like a sprint. They make all this, they make their wealth, and then they they pay for it on the back end because they didn't take care of themselves. I'm like, but think about it reasonably. Like, how much do you actually invest into yourself, into your health? And now that doesn't necessarily have to even be money. That could be time. That could be time to slow down, time to disconnect, time to go get sunlight. We joked the last time, I think, about taking smoke breaks, telling people to take sun breaks, right? They'll take smoke breaks to destroy their health, but not sun breaks, right? Think about the allocation of that, of what you actually invest, right? This is what it costs in order to have these great fulfilled lives. And like you said, it is a short, finite time here. Nobody gets away with it forever, right? No one stays here forever. We're not infinite. Yeah. But it can be very, very different outcomes, and you can have spectacular outcomes if you hit the leverage points. Again, why did we name them leverage points, right? These things are the things that really matter, because people get so tied up. They'll come in and tell me all the things that they're doing for their health, and they're overwhelmed and they're failing, right? They feel like they're failing. It's like, I'm killing myself and I'm not getting anywhere, right? Like, think about the idea of dieting really hard and working out like crazy and not losing any weight. Well, if you don't know what your leptin levels are, that's going to be you, right? Because you're leptin resistant. Your body's not going to give that up. That's the leverage point that's going to make it go. Like we were talking about that podcast, it's what the GLP-1s leverage. Yeah. Now, they have bad side effects, but that's why it works so damn well, right? Because it hit a leverage point that they're killing themselves to try to get. So this can actually be a hell of a lot easier than you think it is.
Right.
But it's just a matter of, do you hit those leverage points? Are you hitting those right spots? Moving that needle is in the direction that you want it to go sometimes doesn't take pure effort.
Right. Yeah. Well, Doc, let's sum up our 5 Archimedes levers, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about how they're all interrelated, like you said earlier, like vitamin D has to go, and then leptin goes, and then melatonin for MSH to work, and then we have to look at UB rates. Sum all of that up in one big connection point for us, and how they're all interconnected, and why you can't just sort of single out one of these things.
Okay, so the main concept in decentralized medicine, which is what Dr. Kevin and I would practice, is this idea that there is no one central idea, right? Centralized medicine is run by Big Pharma. Right. It is a chemical solution for that. Decentralized medicine says, no, there's multiple different things that can happen. There's not one thing that you have to do. And the main one for us that we focus on, especially with our patients, is the combination between light and dark. Bright days, dark nights. If you've seen any of the other podcasts, you've heard us say that. I say that a bunch of different times. So why does that matter? The sunlight that you will get exposed to during the day will actually stimulate your body to produce melatonin. So that way, when it does become dark and your body can perceive that darkness, that melatonin can be released. And that melatonin is what will actually heal and repair or replace your cells that are damaged. Right, so that's why melatonin, so talking about damage, is these misfolded proteins that we're talking about, right? So melatonin is a major function to play with that. Melatonin has to work right, meaning we have to have enough sunlight during the day and enough dark to make it and enough darkness at night to use it before leptin will start to work. Now, leptin is going to signal your body to connect, interchange that information. How much energy do we have? Do we have enough energy to do everything? Let's regulate our hormones. Let's store fat. Let's burn fat. Let's optimize our energy systems. But leptin doesn't work if melatonin doesn't work. Okay? Then, if leptin works, then MSH can work. Well, MSH will be stimulated by the same sunlight that we got during the day that makes our skin tan. Right? So we still need that sun during the day in order to make MSH work. And then MSH is going to do all those things that I listed. Right, as a smorgasbord of bliss, it keeps us out of autoimmune diseases. It kills a whole bunch of different types of infections. It makes our bodies work better. It slows down illness. It pushes up our endorphins, makes us feel great. And then the cool part is MSH signals back and makes your body make more melatonin. So it loops. Now, vitamin D we're using as a measure on lab work of how much sunlight are you getting? Are you getting the type of sunlight that we need in these frames that will make more melatonin, that will stimulate the production of MSH, that will then eventually let leptin work? So if you're taking supplements, we can't tell. And it looks nice on paper, but you're not going to get that sunlight to make melatonin, all these guys. And when all of these guys are working well, your proteins stay healthy because your body's ahead of the curve. it's able to repair before something becomes a long-term problem. It notices, hey, that's supposed to be folded like this, and it's folded like that. And we need to fix that. So just make it go like this, because then it'll work right forever. Because guess what? If you get 70% of them that fold like this, you get Alzheimer's. Just depends where you get it.
Yeah.
So we can look at these 4 different markers and measures and know where somebody is going to be from that perspective. And again, it's a huge leverage point of where to go, but they go back to this idea of we have to reconnect. Now, there's things that we can do to stimulate that and expedite those processes, but on the general basis, the great news is if you want to get your health back or you just want to stay healthy, it's still the same road. The road to great health is still exactly the same. It's still the same pathway out because it's what we're designed to do. So those ideas of each one of them playing together, they were 5 very specifically chosen because they relate to each other. So hopefully I made that make sense in a level that's, in 3 minutes and change.
That was incredible, actually. Yeah, that was perfect. That was awesome. Well, man, that's great. I hope you guys really enjoyed this series that we did on these 5 levers. And next week, we're going to switch gears a little bit and go to some more symptom-based topics. And we'll get into things like digestive issues and some of the other, autoimmune. We'll get deep into some of these other things, thyroid, all the things that we treat here, POTS. We did a podcast on POTS, but we'll get back into some of our symptom-based discussions. But all of those symptom-based discussions will boil down to what do your 5 levers look like? Because if we get
every
those
one of those
right,
has UB rates that are wrong, right? Every single one of those has UB rates that are right. You listed.
If we get those right, everything else should fall back into place. And so people run around worried about the perfect diet. Should I go keto? Should I go carnivore? What kind of water should I drink? Should I filter my water? What vitamins should I take? And their 5 levers are crashed. And so you're worried about the paint color when the foundation of your house is cracked. And so we really want to start by getting these 5 levers right, and it just creates this snowball of everything else falling in place. And everything we do after that goes really quick and is really easy. So if a doctor's ever looked at you and said, well, that's not fixable, or you're just going to have to keep this for life, or, that's just bad luck or bad genes, or you're just getting older, or this just happens sometimes, they probably don't understand these 5 levers because they are critically important in almost all chronic diseases that our patients suffer with today.
For sure, 100% of the time. Yeah. If you feel stuck, if you can't understand why you're having the things that you're having, the answer most likely is going to lie in those levers.
In those levers, right. Man, fascinating. Doc, I'm so glad that you came up with those 5 levers. Thank you for doing all the research. I know you've got, decades of research to figure all of this out for us. And I've got over a decade of studying with you on these 5 levers now. So, man, you're doing amazing things. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. If you're interested in this, and just so you guys know, I'm in South Louisiana and Dr. Rob is in Vegas, but we treat patients from everywhere. I know both of us have patients that fly in. I've got a little deal here with a local hotel next to my office, and I know he does as well. We have patients flying from all over the country to look at these things and to treat with us and go through our program. So, you can always check out our websites. We have tons of information on there. We'd love to see you if you're struggling. We will be here for you. We'll give it 100%. Dr. Rob and I both know, I know Dr. Rob and I do as well. We love our patients. We want to see our patients get better, and we just pour our hearts out every day to try to help as many people as possible. All right. Thanks for joining us. Doc, thanks again.
Great seeing you. Talk soon.
See you guys next week.